my general finding is, and I'm going to use like let's say a challenge comes up and we'll give it like a 0 to 10. It's like most people get over 2s and 3s really well. It's like, oh yeah, especially business owners, because we face challenge all the time. It's when the 7s and 8s and 9s and 10s come up is where you will see many people come undone. And even in myself, this is something I've intentionally put a lot of time into as a skill, because much to what you referenced earlier, I realized this is the difference. So at times, there's almost this illusion that like you might fix a problem and then you're going to have no more problems in business. You may have lured yourself into that at a point of like, if I just fix this, then things will be rosy. And turns out not so much. So it's a different attitude to go at, but let's dig into it at the foundational layer. Let's have a look at it.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I think, look, for some context is probably helpful. So I grew up in a totally fine family, but we had issues. We had issues, and early on there was some pretty major formative stuff that happened to me. I mean, I shattered my spine in a motorbike accident. That was pretty major. That completely changed the trajectory of my life, and it really gave me a perspective. It was a proper near death experience. Later on, I realized how much formative, how much that kind of changed my perspective on life. At the time, I was just kind of going through things. We had some pretty major mental health stuff happen in my family, and a whole bunch of other kind of things break down. But through a series of events, I worked out that it was there was much more to be gained by running towards the fire than away from it. You hear the kind of thing like, if a house is burning down, would you run towards it or away from it? And in my experience, the greatest thing that you can ever do is to kind of like seek to try and solve, because you're gonna help other people. And so in a very literal sense, there was moments in my life where I had to walk into harm's way in a literal sense for the benefit of wanting to help other people. And that kind of set me up with a frame. And I ended up doing event management and stuff like that all around the world, and major stuff. When you've got festivals and events, you're dealing with like tens of thousands of people on site. People die, like it happens. There's major accidents, people die, there's fires, there's all these kind of things. And over time, I developed a resilience to these kind of like really major outcomes, to the degree that it was like, if something major happened, like a cyclone or a death or there's been a massive collapse of something, it was like, call Goose. Goose is the guy to call. And so that became a part of my identity as well, and really built within me. And so once you've been to enough of those kind of things, it's kind of like a paramedic in a sense. It's like once you've been exposed to enough trauma, you start to put everything else in context. So there's some really kind of like background stuff that's important, but you don't have to have gone through all of that kind of stuff in order to develop resilience. The good thing about those kind of situations that came around through my life, they gave me the perspective to understand. Now, some of the stimulus and input that I've experienced throughout my life has been extrinsic, and some of it's been intrinsic. And so what I mean by that is, in many cases, I have put myself in a situation myself that has required a high degree of resilience. And so for those of you who don't know, a part of my background is like, I don't know, I'm not even sure now, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that in a kind of like, it was pretty hardcore. Like to the degree that if I told you the kind of things that I was doing on a daily basis, most people would be dead. And I was doing that kind of stuff on a daily basis. And, but that, even if I go back on that a little bit further, when I broke my back, the doctors prescribed me more morphine than a terminal cancer patient. My mum's a nurse, so she knew that was like, it was like the highest dose of morphine she'd ever seen anyone take. And they forgot to take me off it. And so I was back at school and I was doing all this stuff. And one day I was getting ready for school and I looked in the mirror and I was just like, kind of like basically just off my head. And I was like, what's going on here? I went to the doctor and he was like, oh, sorry, we should have taken you off that 6 months ago.
What?
Yeah. And that was my first moment where I really faced that choice. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. So I'm now a morphine addict. And I was like 14, 15 years old. And I made a choice in that moment. I said, well, I'm not going to be defined by this. And so I went home and I threw all of the stuff in the bin and I just went cold turkey every single day. And I said, I will not be defined or owned by this. And so I went to school every single day. I didn't change any of my stuff. I was like, I'm going to 100% own it. And that act of making that choice and realizing that I could choose the outcome that I wanted and not be a victim of my circumstance gave me the comprehension to understand that I could make those choices at any moment. Later on in life, I developed deep addictions again. And maybe those two things are related. But it was through the process of actually reminding myself, actually, I have a choice to make here. I can choose whichever path I want. I can choose whatever outcome I want in life. I can choose the way that I perceive everything that is in perception is reality. So everything that I want is a choice. I can choose to suffer. I can choose to be grateful. I can choose to take whatever path I want. I can choose to be wealthy. I can choose to be healthy. I can choose to be unhappy. I can choose to, everything is a choice. And so April 1st, 2018, I made a choice to get completely sober again. And that wasn't a smooth ride, by the way, but it was a choice. And so through a lot of those kind of circumstances, like I know what it's like to be at the bottom. Like I know what it's like to have no money, like literally no money, like to be literally broke, literally sleeping on the floor in your office because you've got nowhere else to go because nobody wants you to stay at their house because you're an alcoholic drug addict, to have nothing. And so once you've been, and I've been further down to the bottom, I've been further below that too, to places that I don't even want to talk about. And so when you know what it's like to be at the bottom, you actually have a perspective to actually know how far you can push yourself. So only when you sort of find those edges, I think, and when you kind of push yourself that you really have a different perspective. Now, again, we can talk about tools and practicality, so you don't have to become a drug addict to go broke in order to develop resilience, but there's a little bit of background context.
Could I come in on that one? Because I want to understand more about this because there's some significant moments in your life, and particularly at a younger and formative age.
Yep.
When I look at that, though, and you can use the power of hindsight to go through this, overcoming such things and at such a high degree, has that become an advantage for you in business where, like, when you look at some of that stuff, it's like, okay, an employee quits, it's like, this is nothing.
It's nothing.
So, like, a comparative view is that you are much more, I suppose, conditioned to handle higher degrees of challenge because of that?
Yeah, 100%. But I don't want anyone to think that makes me special because anyone can develop the resilience. It's been useful to me because I've had, maybe we'll call it like a head start. Anyone can develop enough resilience, right? So, but I've had a bit of a head start because I've had all those experiences. And that's absolutely set me up for success. So if we talk about, let me give you a quick run through of the business side of things because we've then relevant to this. So we started Dashdot in 2019. We had $5,000, no safety net, no backup, no nothing. We didn't know anyone in the industry. We'd never done this kind of thing before. Never really run a business. Didn't know how to do sales and marketing. Like we had nothing, and there was no. It was like win or die. Basically, it was like we had nothing, and so we had to walk around the supermarkets eating food off the shelf. Right, because we were like to choose, like, are we going to spend our $5,000 on ads or food? It was like, well, ads will hopefully make us money, right? So we did that. So we started pretty hardcore. Then we got some success, and we were like, yeah, we're rock stars. This is awesome, and we got some ego. And then COVID hit, and then when COVID hit, I just literally come from, I was like broke, drug addict, got sober. Kind of like started to try and make something of myself, started a business with $5,000, grind, fear, run, like try and get somewhere, started to get some traction, started thinking, life's finally good. I can actually do the things. I can go out and eat at a restaurant. Oh my God. And then, this is why I felt so good. And then COVID hit and we had an unconditional money back guarantee on our, with our clients. So roughly 95% of our clients asked for a refund on the spot. So that was like money that had already come in that had already been spent, which we had to then return. Plus on new income coming in, we had a 97% loss of revenue from March to April. And so we basically went back to, and Charlie, you were around at that point, so you kind of know that moment.
I'm pridefully one of the 5% of people who hung around, by the way.
Yeah.
All those other ones.
Totally. And you did exceptionally well because of it, right? So
can we call them up? We'll start a call-in show. No, I'm not spiteful at all.
Ramsey, here it is.
But but that was literally back to. Okay, I remember having the conversations with Gabby. I was like, "What are we going to do about food? Like, Like literally, what are we going to do about food? And that was really hard. That was tough. That was really tough. And as we were going through that, the benefit that I had of like, well, what is the worst that can happen? And I've got some, this is a really interesting kind of way to think about it. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? And so, you've probably said before on this show, and for anyone, like, what's the upside, what's the downside, and can I live with the downside? The benefit of having hit rock bottom, like real rock bottom, like legit rock bottom, is that, man, everything's upside from there. So it's like, will it ever get that bad again? I don't know. This probably isn't as bad as that. Okay, well, let's just keep going.
Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into creating wealth inside and outside your business, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.